You're listening to a Nite Muse media production. Tonight, we return to the lost art of radio storytelling. Close your eyes if you like, and let the theater of the mind begin. Your host for this journey is Sunny.
Tonight, we talk about the curious case of Friday the 13th, a date that has made perfectly reasonable people hesitate before boarding airplanes, signing contracts, or, if they're particularly superstitious, even leaving the house. Good evening. How's my Nightside tribe doing? This is Sunny with Nite Muse Media. I'm coming to you from somewhere above the 45th parallel, where winter's grip is tightening like a stranglehold before letting go to the welcoming arms of spring. I will attach a few photos towards the end of this musing so you can get a glimpse into the world of WNMM's headquarters this day. So now, let's chat about Friday the 13th, shall we? Funny thing about Friday the 13th is that it's really two separate suspicions that somehow joined forces like a bad buddy cop movie. First, you have the number 13. For centuries, people have been uneasy about 13. 12 seems to be the number everyone likes. It's 12 months, 12 zodiac signs, 12 hours on the clock, 12 apostles. 12 feels tidy. It feels complete, even and balanced. And then comes along 13, the number that doesn't quite fit. It's the extra guest at the table, the unexpected visitor who shows up just when everything seemed perfectly arranged. In fact, at the famous Last Supper, there were 13 people sitting at the table, I believe, and Judas, the betrayer, was the 13th guest. Even the Norse gods had trouble with 13. In old legend, 12 gods gathered for a banquet when the trickster Loki arrived uninvited as the 13th guest. What followed was chaos and death of the beloved god Balder. So 13 had already built a reputation as a bit of a troublemaker. But then we add Friday. Friday carried its own uneasy reputation in medieval Europe. Tradition held that the crucifixion of Jesus occurred on a Friday. Other folklore claimed Friday was the day Adam and Eve was expelled from Eden, and even the day that Cain slew Abel. Do I have proof? Not personally. Whether those stories were historically accurate, it didn't really matter, because the reputation stuck. Eventually, someone put the two ideas together. You have the unlucky day and the unlucky number. And suddenly, we had the most suspicious date on the calendar. Now, here's where history begins to play along. On Friday, October 13th in 1307, King Philip of France ordered the mass arrest of the Knights Templar, one of the most powerful religious orders of the Middle Ages. Fast forward several centuries, on January 13, 1939, devastating bushfires swept across Victoria, Australia, in what became known as the Black Friday bushfires. Destroyed towns and forests. It claimed many lives. During World War II, on Friday, September 13, 1940, German bombers struck Buckingham Palace during the Blitz while the King and the Queen were inside. And then there was the tragic Kitty case in New York on Friday, March 13, 1964, which later inspired research into the psychological phenomena known as the bystander effect. And perhaps one of the most dramatic survival stories of the 20th century began Friday, October the 13th, 1972, when a plane crashed into the Andes Mountains. Survivors endured more than 2 months in brutal conditions before rescue in what became known as the Miracle of the Andes. More recently, on Friday, January 13th in 2012, the cruise ship Costa Concordia struck rocks and capsized off the coast of Italy. By now, you might be thinking Friday the 13th has a pretty convincing resume of strange coincidences. But humans being humans didn't just sit back and accept bad luck. We invented ways to fight back. One of the oldest traditions is knocking on wood. The belief may come from ancient cultures that thought protective spirits lived in trees. So by tapping on the wood, you were asking those spirits for a little protection. Others carried good luck charms, rabbit's feet, lucky coins, four-leaf clovers, horseshoes, little objects meant to absorb misfortune before it reached you. Some people crossed their fingers, originally a small symbol of the cross used for protection. And if you happened to spill salt, well, tradition says you should throw a pinch over your left shoulder to blind any mischievous spirits lurking behind you. And then there was the simplest solution of all. Some people simply stayed home, and they just waited for the day to pass. Even today, studies suggest fewer people schedule major events or travel on Friday the 13th. Ironically, that extra caution might actually make the day a little safer. But the legend didn't stop with folklore. It also made its way into music. Rock bands, punk groups, and blues artists all have written songs about the mysterious date. The heavy rock band Atomic Rooster released a dark track called Friday the 13th back in 1970. And then you have horror punk group The Misfits. They recorded their own version inspired by the slasher movie legend. Even blues and folk musicians like Lonnie Donegan had fun with the superstition, turning the unlucky day into a tongue-in-cheek musical story. It seems that once a legend sticks around long enough, somebody eventually writes a song about it. And of course, Hollywood didn't resist the temptation either. The Friday the 13th horror films turned the date into one of the most famous spooky symbols in pop culture. But here's a twist. Statistically speaking, there's nothing unusual about the day at all. The calendar guarantees at least one Friday the 13th every year, sometimes 3. With that many chances, history is bound to place a few dramatic events on the date. Once people expect something strange to happen, they begin noticing every single little coincidence. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. But perhaps the most interesting twist is nature itself seems perfectly comfortable with the number 13. There are about 13 lunar cycles each year. Some cicadas emerge every 13 years. Flowers grow in patterns of 13 petals, and pineapples spiral in rows of 13. Even large animals like horses have 13 pairs of ribs. So maybe 13 was never unlucky at all. Maybe it was simply the number that refused to behave the way humans expected it to, and history has shown us time and time again, we humans tend to get nervous around things we cannot quite explain. So, whether you believe Friday the 13th is cursed, coincidental, or simply a good excuse to stay up late listening to strange radio programs, one thing's certain, the legend isn't going anywhere, and somewhere tonight, someone is probably glancing at the calendar and deciding it might be a good night to keep the lights on. Follow the signals, question the noise. I'll see you on the night side.
Said I made up my mind this time. I'm taking it over. Modest tranquility. Said I made up my mind.